Have you heard of the double slit experiment and manifesting? Well, I think they go together. And manifesting, as with everything else, I think it's all related to science, which is all part of quantum physics, and they'll have the answer. But stay tuned and I'll tell you how manifesting is very similar to the double slit experiment. Stay tuned. And welcome back to the Brac Shop. And this is the portal to the paranormal, the spiritual, and the unknown, or unexplained. And I'm Tom from the shop. Now, have you heard of the double slit experiment? Because I'll tell you a bit about it if you haven't. And manifestations. Manifesting. Do you have trouble manifesting? Well, I have a theory about it and I have a method. But first, the double slit experiment. Now, the double slit experiment originally goes back to 1803 when Thomas Young did the wave experiment. Now, he developed the theory that light traveled in waves, the wave theory of light. And he proved this by his double slit experiment. And he did this with water and also with light as well. In this example, the single slit, the waves go through it and create a single line on the far screen, as you can see here. Now, with two slits, the waves go through the two slits and they cancel out each other. And on the far screen, they create an interference pattern. A whole lot of different slits form on the back screen. As you can see here, if we use balls aimed at a single slit, they will go through the slit and form a single line on the far screen. Now, if we had two slits, we would have two lines on the far wall, showing that it traveled in a straight line and not in a wave, creating an interference pattern. And this proved Thomas Young's theory that light traveled in waves, that it wasn't corpuscular like particles and basically traveled in a straight line. And we've also found out that electrons and atoms behave the same way as light. And if you aimed it through a single slit, it would create a single line on the far wall. And with two slits, however, this is where things start to get strange. We have an interference pattern. Now, we didn't realize why this was happening, and so they wanted to test it. So they decided to shoot an electron one at a time through the slits and see what was happening. Now, they couldn't explain it, that they were still creating an interference pattern. Maybe they were splitting up and going through, and they didn't realize what was happening. Maybe they split up and went through the slits and then hit each other, creating an interference pattern. So they decided to observe it with detectors. Now, what they found, that every time that they were observing it with a detector, they would actually create the two single bands on the far screen. So when it was observed, it was behaving like particles traveling in a straight line. And when it wasn't observed, it looked like it was traveling in waves, creating interference patterns on the back screen. Why was this happening? When we're watching it, observing it, it behaves in one way, and when we ignore it, it behaves in a different way. Well, this could be very similar to manifesting. And so, when you're observing with a detector, it acts as a particle and it won't give you your wave formations again. And that's because you're observing it. Now, that is very similar to manifesting, or the law of attraction. And as some people are familiar with The Secret, it's very similar intentions. I have a particular method myself, which is a bit different. And I think, well, other people have said they've manifested and they've used different techniques. So I only come down to the conclusion that there are different techniques to manifesting. Now, mine, which has worked in certain aspects, is that you put it out there and forget about it. Very easily said than done. It puts it into practice. Which is why you probably will find some of the smaller things that you thought of or wanted have actually manifested, and not so much the big things. But going back to this double slit experiment, how you keep observing and it won't give you the results you're expecting, or why it won't give you the results you're expecting. Now, the reason I would believe is that you're observing it, giving it attention, paying too much attention to it. So basically, if you forget about it, it'll do what it's going to do anyway. So let's say you want to manifest something. Put your intentions out there and then let it go. Just forget about it and it will deliver. But while you're concentrating on it, focusing on it, it's also proving that you don't have it. And that's why you're focusing on it. And it shows that you have the lack of it. And so the universe will continue to give you what you expect, a lack of. And as Abraham Hicks says, you've got the resistance there, and you've got to lower the resistance. And I've noticed for myself that when I have manifested things is when I haven't been thinking about it, when I've completely put it out of my mind. And that's why I say put it out there and forget about it. Like an example I had a few years ago. Well, I wanted to go overseas because there was some research I had to do there. But I just couldn't justify using the funds for that period. I even actually went in and started doing planning for that particular period and airline tickets and how much money I would need and all that sort of thing. And I thought I just couldn't justify it. So I put it out of my head. And then quite coincidentally, as the time got closer, there was a family wedding and I was invited to it. And I thought, my gosh, that is an important event for me anyway, a family wedding. And so I decided I'd have to use the money. And I took the trip to where I wanted to go, where I also did the research as well. Now, that manifestation appeared actually after I actually thought it was not going to happen. And it came around that things happened that I had to go. I didn't have to go, but I wanted to go, and it was an important event, so I did go. But it just shows that I manifested that trip. Jay just decided to want to get married, and so they did. And that was a good enough reason for me to fly overseas and use the money for it and do the research that I wanted to do. So I manifested it. And that was even after giving up the whole idea. But in manifesting. So that's why I have a philosophy: put it out there and forget about it. And as Abraham Hicks says, maybe I put it out there and I didn't have the resistance for it. I had lowered my resistance. So think about that. So that's why sometimes what I tend to think, that if you're thinking about what you want all the time, as some techniques say you should do, it's just showing that you haven't got it. And so the universe gives you what you haven't got. So what do you think? And just like the double slit experiment, the more you keep observing this particular action, the more it will show you something else. So you forget about it and let it do what it has to do. And that's my theory on it. What do you think? Now, I have a total technique for manifesting, and I will show that in an upcoming episode. And if you don't want to miss out on that, please subscribe and click the notification bell, and that will let you know when I do release new videos. And also, if you like this episode, click the like button and share it. Tell your friends. And help grow the channel as well. That is my manifestation, one of the many. So what do you think? Is it similar to the double slit experiment, which is all part of quantum physics? And there are a lot of questions to quantum physics, which is actually part of science, which I feel ties up the whole paranormal and spiritual realms together. It's just that we don't understand what's going on as yet, which is why we've put these subjects in these divisions. It's like explaining electricity to someone 500 years ago. If you could press a button on the wall and all of a sudden there's light, what magic is this? And you'd be burnt at the stake. So it's the same idea. Once we find out what all this quantum physics is all about, it will probably debunk all the paranormal topics like spirits and ghosts and hauntings and the others as well. What do you think? And going into the spiritual realm with manifesting, write down your comments and let me know what you think. After all, again, it's another thing of quantum physics needing to explain it to us for our vibrations that we're giving off, like our intentions, like the water experiment, which I've talked about in another episode. So intentions, mind over matter, it all raises your vibrations, which have an effect on things around us. And again, the same with manifesting. But to get these vibrations out there, we've got to stop thinking about it. So what do you think? And in some upcoming episodes, I will tell you my theory and techniques on how to stop thinking about it as well. Because it's very hard to stop thinking about it, because it's a bit like saying, don't think about the white elephant. All of a sudden, you think about the white elephant and you can't get it out of your mind. So what do you think? Is it connected, the double slit experiment, with manifesting, with paranormal? Write your comments. Tell me what you think. So until next time, and don't forget, I will have my manifesting techniques coming up soon. So until then, stay well and happy.